That's a very interesting question. Are you smart enough to be a medical doctor? Honestly, I can't answer that question for you. That's something that's, honestly, I don't think you can even answer that question right now. Or you might be able to. And the reason I say I don't think you can answer that question is because you're not a medical doctor. So how are you supposed to know if you're smart enough to be a medical doctor if you're not a medical doctor? It's not like you can really take a test and say, oh, he's smart enough to be a medical doctor. It's when you're practicing medicine, can you cut it or not? That's what it really comes down to. So I think, am I smart enough to be a medical doctor is the wrong question to ask. I think the more appropriate question for a pre-medical student to ask is, am I disciplined enough to be a medical doctor? Being a good doctor isn't all about brains and intelligence. It's not about getting the highest scores on the test. Being a good doctor is part of that. I mean, part of it is that, but there's a lot more that goes into it, right? It's how hard do you work? Do you look over your patient's charts twice to make sure you're not missing anything? If you're in the operating room, how vigilant are you about making sure you didn't leave any foreign objects left behind after you do a procedure? There's a lot of discipline that goes into being a really good doctor, and that discipline is something you can start right now as a pre-medical student. So instead of saying, am I smart enough to be a medical doctor, which is something that you can't really answer, you should be saying, am I disciplined enough to be a medical doctor? And let me show you the difference in mindset between those two questions. So, am I smart enough to be a medical doctor? That's questioning your confidence. That's questioning your ability, your intellect. That's showing doubt in yourself is what that's doing. You're doubting yourself before you even give yourself a chance. I'm a pretty simple person, and when I was a pre-medical student, I don't really remember ever asking myself, am I smart enough to be a medical doctor? The way I looked at it was, well, let me be disciplined and let me work very, very hard right now so I can get to the point where I have a shot at being a medical doctor. And then once I'm there, then I'll know if I'm smart enough to be a medical doctor. Two completely different things. One of them is being disciplined and saying, let me work hard to get there. The other one saying, I don't know if I can get there. And the way you think about it, it's that mindset that is going to really affect the way you perform in your courses. So I think asking yourself, are you disciplined enough to be a medical doctor is the more appropriate question. Are you disciplined enough to wake up in the morning and study for an hour before your classes start? Are you disciplined enough to skip that Friday night party when everybody's going to the frat house to study for a test that might be in a week? Are you disciplined enough to go to your professor's office hours 1 week before every test? These are things that really take discipline and things that you have to be persistent in and vigilant in if you want to even have the opportunity to be a medical doctor. My wife always says something that I think is very valuable and very important that makes perfect sense to me. Don't count yourself out. So when you start to ask yourself, am I smart enough to be a medical doctor, you're already starting to try to count yourself out the game and say, I don't know if I can do this. As opposed to saying, I'm going to work hard, and then at some point down the line, I'll find out if I'm really cut out for it. And I don't mean to say don't examine yourself, don't evaluate yourself to see if you're really cut out for it or not. What I am saying is you should definitely think about what does it take to be a medical doctor, but what does it take to be a medical doctor is a little bit different from, am I smart enough to be a medical doctor? The very first blog I ever wrote on DiverseMedicine was called, Are You Smart Enough to Be a Medical Doctor? And to this day, that happens to be the blog that still gets the most Google search engine hits. For some reason, within our community, a lot of people have that self-doubt. They have to question that, am I smart enough to be a medical doctor? I'll just say, just think about it, look at your grades, and instead of worrying so much about, are you smart enough to be a medical doctor, just be disciplined and get those high scores on your test. That way you'll have the opportunity to find out if you're smart enough to be a medical doctor. But work on getting there first before kind of questioning yourself and counting yourself out.